Okay, welcome to the book of Judges. We are into the next book in the Old Testament. Something that's very important to understand about this is, Joshua has gone, he's died, Eleazar, the high priest, has died. So now we have to understand who's ruling and reigning in Israel now, what's going to happen to these people, how do they form their government, their religious affiliations, what do they do from here? Very, very important things to look at. Now, one thing that is very important for us to consider as well, we're going to get into basically another way to think about this, because if you realize it, and there's a great parallel with this in the Book of Mormon, when King Mosiah, none of his sons will take up leadership. Basically, they won't be a king. He goes into this great lecture about why a king is a good idea. Sometimes, only if the king is righteous. If the king is righteous, you're great. If the king is bad, you should never have a king ever. So in order to prevent wickedness, because wickedness goes rapidly under a bad king, he created a system of a structure, basically, and he probably got some of it from the Old Testament, in fact, because he had the scriptures in the Book of Mormon times. So this was probably around 400 AD that King Mosiah is doing this, and realize the Book of Judges is coming around like 1400 BC. So, almost 1,000 years before King Mosiah did his thing, the Israelites had to come up with a new way to govern, because there wasn't a continuation of the prophets. Moses continued to Joshua, but Joshua did not continue it to somebody else. So now they're going, what do we do? If you remember, Moses had appointed judges in Israel. Moses appointed other men to help out. They had rulers of each of the tribes that would come together to work with Eleazar and Joshua in making decisions and doing things. So they had some tribal government that would come together in a coalition to work together. So that's basically what they end up with, is this idea of judges, these common people who are to work together to help the people collectively, basically. But a lot of the challenges is the tribes kind of go it alone. They have the leaders of each tribe, and then those leaders come together to work with all Israel. Those are the judges. But each tribe kind of keeps to themselves. Now that they have land, they can put up fences, they can ignore their neighbors, and they're not working together as much, helping each other out. And we're going to see that here in chapter 1, because Judah, Simeon, and Joseph, those three tribes, continue to get rid of Canaanites out of the areas where they are living. Remember, they hadn't gotten rid of all of them. Some of them the Lord pushed out. Now they're trying to get rid of the rest of them. And then remnants of the Canaanites remain in the lands of Judah, Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun, Asher, Naphtali, and Dan. So there's other people they didn't get rid of that end up staying and living. But they were warned by Joshua not to intermarry or mingle too closely with. Don't merge your culture with theirs. Live around each other, but not become the same kind of person, basically. In the world, but not of the world, if you will. So verse 1, and now after the death of Joshua, it came to pass that the children of Israel asked the Lord, saying, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. And Judah said unto Simeon his brother, come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I likewise will go with thee into thy lot. So Simeon went with him. Now this is important, okay? So the people are praying to God, going, who's going to follow us? So God sends down a message to them and says, basically, Judah is going to be kind of the head tribe for all of the tribes, if you will, and go in front of them to deal with these people. So then Judah says, hey, Simeon, tribe of Simeon, come with me, and we'll go take out these Canaanites and deal with these people, basically. So verse 4, Judah went up, and the Lord delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they slew them of Bezek 10,000 men. So they finished getting rid of the Perizzites like they were supposed to do. God said to them, you need to get rid of that tribe. Verse 5, and they found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adoni-Bezek fled, and they pursued after him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. So his big toes, they cut off, and his thumbs, they cut off. So, ouch. Doesn't sound fun. They kind of mutilated him. Verse 7, and Adonai-Bezek said, 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered their meat under my table, as I have done, so God hath requited me, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. So they mutilated him, and then they basically kind of kept him captive, basically in Jerusalem, which is where he died. This sounds gross, and it should sound gross. This is an unfortunate thing that was quite common back then, where in order to strike fear in everybody else, they would mutilate their enemy, because the next people would hear about it and go, oh my gosh, they didn't just kill him, they did all kinds of stuff. So we don't want to fight them either, because I don't want to have that happen to me. It's one thing to die, go into battle and die. It's another thing to go into battle, be captured, and then severely tortured, and then die. So this was not an uncommon thing for people all over the ancient world to do. Even in more modern wars, to some people would make examples of others in an effort to convince everybody else, don't fight us. Basically, it's kind of a psychological warfare tactic. Verse 8, now the children of Israel had fought against Jerusalem. Children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem and had taken it and smitten it with the edge of the sword and set the city on fire. So this sounds crazy, because Jerusalem was given to Judah as their inheritance. So what's going on here? There's actually some interesting stuff. If you look at the Habiri of the El-Amarna tablets, we have some information here. It says the letters of Abdi-Hepa of Jerusalem show that the Habiri were overrunning the territory over which he ruled. This guy, Abdi-Hepa, he is a ruler of Jerusalem, but the Habiri, this other group, was overrunning him. His letters made it evident that he ruled an extensive region. We learned from Abdi-Hepa that the Habiri were pushing into Gath, Lachish, and Gezer. Beth-shemesh and Keilah had gone over to them. They were also attacking Jerusalem, which apparently fell into their hands, for Abdi-Hepa's letters cease. The Habiri of whom he writes appear to have pushed up from the south along the Philistines' plains. So he's probably, we have this letter about the Habiri, probably talking about Judah coming in and fighting them. They couldn't get rid of the Philistines, but they end up in Jerusalem and end up taking out the rest of the people that were living in Jerusalem, basically. Verse 9, and afterward the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites that dwelt in the mountain and in the valley in the south. And Judah went against the Canaanites that dwelt in Hebron. Now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba, and they slew Sheshai and Ahiman and Talmai. And from thence he went against the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir before was Kirjath Sepher. They gave that history towards the end of the book of Joshua. And Caleb, remember, said, he that smiteth Kirjath Sepher and taketh it, him will I give Achish, Akshah, my daughter, to wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Akshah, his daughter, to wife. So this is remembering what's going on here, basically. And so Caleb was still around, and so he promised this, and this gave his daughter. And it came to pass when she came to him that she moved him to ask of her father a field, and she lighted from off her ass, and Caleb said unto her, what wilt thou? And she said unto him, give me a blessing, for thou hast given me a south land. Give me also springs of water. And Caleb gave her the upper springs and the nether springs. So just saying, this is that she gave his daughter, so she's like, I want some of my inheritance, and so I'm going to take all this and give it to me, and so he did. Verse 16, the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lieth in the south of Arad, and they went and dwelt among the people. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath, and utterly destroyed it, and the name of the city was called Hormah. So now there's the tribe of, Simeon came in with Judah, remember, and then the Kenites, who was the father-in-law of Moses, that tribe of people who were blessed, but not literally the tribe of Israel, they came in and they worked with Judah and kind of melded with Judah for a while to help dealing with these battles. And Judah also took Gaza and the coast thereof, and Askelon and the coast thereof, and Ekron the coast thereof. The Lord was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountains, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. This is the Philistines group, so we'll see later on. They were a little harder to fight. They gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said, and he expelled thence the 3 sons of Anak. The children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites dwell with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem unto this day. And the house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and the Lord was with them. And the house of Joseph sent to describe Bethel. Now the name of the city before was Luz. And the spies saw a man come forth out of the city, and they said unto him, Show us, we pray thee, the entrance into the city, and we will show thee mercy. And when he showed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword, but they let go of the man and all his family. So that's kind of a similar thing that you remember the woman at Jericho got. Verse 26, the man went into the land of the Hittites and built a city and called the name thereof Luz, which is the name thereof unto this day. So he went and started another city called Luz. So verse 27, neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Beth-shemesh and her towns, nor Tanakh and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Ibleam and her towns, or Megiddo, and her towns, and the Canaanites would dwell in that land. And it came to pass, when Israel was strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute, and did not utterly drive them out. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer, and the Canaanites dwelt in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive them out, and Asher did not drive them out. But the Asherites dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beth-shemesh, in verse 33. Verse 34, the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountain, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley. But the Amorites would dwell in Mount Heres, in Aijalon, and in Shaalbim. Yet the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed, so that they became tributaries. And the coast of the Amorites was from the going up, from the rock and upward. So this is just giving us a little bit more background on what was going on with these battles as they're trying to get rid of these people, but they couldn't completely get rid of them. Why? I mean, they wiped out so many other groups. Why? Well, as we're going to see, the people weren't completely keeping the commandments, and so they weren't fully getting the blessings of God. They kind of thought God was on their side, but they've lost him. You know, a lot of scholars believe that in a way the spirit of Israel passed away when Joshua passed away. He was kind of the last king-type leader Israel had for a while, basically. And they would kind of reject kings for a while with this idea of judges. So they had these groups to come together, but the tribes still worked individually and would coordinate efforts together, but it wasn't quite as unified as they used to be under Moses and Joshua. So big change that's happening to Israel as they are having a more of a decentralized government, meaning a series of judges rather than a monarchy type system. So just a change in how their leadership is, and not quite following the spiritual path, as much revelation, as much opportunity as they used to have, which is going to cause problems that we're going to see in the next chapter.